Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 11. A little over a month left, and there's something that I learned over spring break that I just wanted to share with you. So I went to a mental health first aid thing. It's this all-day program. But what was, I thought, really interesting and recommended is while we were there, the person said, actually stopped and said, put this number in your phone, right? And so what I would like you to do right now is hit pause and put this or both numbers in your phone if you don't have them in there already. And here's why. If you are ever in a situation where you find somebody is super, depressed or being suicidal, which we know happens, you might be going, oh my goodness, what do I do? And at the very least, if you have this in your phone, we always have our phones with, you can pull that phone number out, right? Give it to the person or call it with the person, or just having it is a little peace of mind that you can have in your back pocket. So please hit pause and put this one or both in your phone. The Trevor Lifeline is also focuses on LGBTQ youth and young adults too. So both of them are very good numbers to have. Okay, moving on. In my psychology class that I was taking, and I heard a beautiful explanation from Dr. Harold on why APA does not use quotes from textbooks. And what she said is, in psychology, the idea of a textbook is to learn from it. And so if you are using a textbook, you want to show that you know it and understand it, so you would paraphrase it. The textbook still gets cited, but of course paraphrased and not quotes. And I thought that was really interesting. And if you're writing in your APA paper, right, using a textbook, well, you paraphrase because that's the standard of that field, right? And paraphrasing is a great way to show that you understand the idea. Okay, now over break we were in Chicago, and I wanted to say a couple things about World War II, tied into passive writing and context, right? So a couple people have said, hey, I didn't think I would be that interested in the subject, but I actually was. So The Captive Mind, which one of your fellow students used as a source, and then I saw that and I'm like, holy cow, I went and bought it, actually has a chapter on our author, right, where he's actually looking at his work. And one of the things about getting different perspectives, and this is something that you're going to hear me say again and again for the next 4 weeks, because as you're looking at your topic, I'm going to be challenging you to be looking at it from multiple perspectives. Now, in this is really interesting. In the United States, just recently, right, women have been cleared to go into the combat arms, right? And so this is 70 years after World War II. This book starts out with him being in a village in Poland saying, the war ended for me when a woman came out of the field with a machine gun leading other soldiers. So at the time, the Soviet Union, who had lost so many men in the German Blitzkrieg, there were female snipers. Actually, if you think that American Sniper book you read, Guy Killed a Lot, which is like 150, the top Russian female sniper killed 309 men. But female fighter pilots, female tankers, female snipers in 1940. Why? Because they were needed, right? So you can get different perspectives, and it wasn't World War. If you talk to somebody in Russia, it's not World War II, right? Because of all the stuff happening in World War I is not like we think about it, and it's the Great Patriotic War. So when it comes to perspective, right, we call it the Vietnam War, right? The Vietnamese call it the American War because the Americans invaded their country. So you can see you're going to get different perspective on things. And for those of you who are interested in World War II, I just have one book recommendation, and I'll put a link to it once I remember. And it's called A Higher Call. And it's really fascinating because, I'll give you the short of it. there was an American bomber that had just, dropped its bombs on Germany. It was all shot up. A German fighter pilot, this is near the end of the war, flew up to it, and his job, if he's not a traitor, is to destroy it. And instead, he flew with it, and by that way protecting it, and then flew back home, never told anybody because they would have killed him. And it's a really interesting look at how Americans were looking at the war. The Americans also, as soon as that B-17, that bomber landed, all of the crew were sworn to secrecy and could not talk about it. So you get why both the German pilot wouldn't tell anybody, why the Americans, men on that bomber were told to, you will say nothing to anybody. And even 50 years later, when that German pilot was living in Canada and word of the story came out, right, some people in Germany were saying, words I won't use on YouTube, right? So it's really interesting. It also goes into after the war, right, how that German pilot and pilots in general were being scapegoated for losing the war. So if any of this stuff has been interesting to you, A Higher Call, I'll put a link up. Really fascinating. Once you get through all this stuff, put it on your summer reading list, and you will not be disappointed. Now, this picture right here is the U-505. Now, this is a German U-boat submarine that was captured during World War II. And that's a secret. I mean, it was at the time, and we did not want anybody to know about it. And here's where I get to talk about passive voice. Passive voice is great when the action is the most important thing and you don't care who did it. Now, the weakness of passive voice is that it does just that. It erases who did it, right? Which is why politicians use passive voice all the time. Mistakes were made. Oh, poor mistakes. As opposed to, I made a mistake. We made a mistake. Joe made a mistake, right? So I'll give you an example from the exhibit, right? When you look down here, right? When you capture soldiers, according to the Geneva Convention, which you signed, you have to notify the next of kin so they know that their family members aren't dead. Now, this capturing the submarine was a secret, and we didn't want people to know, so we did not follow the Geneva Convention for these men. So check out the wording of this. In general, the captives were treated very well. However, they were isolated from other prisoners, and the U.S. Navy confiscated all letters they attempted to send out. This treatment did not comply with the Geneva Convention. Now, technically, this isn't passive voice because you have the word treatment in there. The treatment didn't comply. But if you really look at the essence of what passive voice is the subject is sort of disappears. And if you read this, you'd go, the treatment didn't comply. Dang you, treatment, you comply. No, the Navy didn't comply with the Geneva Convention, right? And I'm not blaming anybody. Hey, that's what you're going to do if you're going to keep something secret. But I'm saying, notice the language, right? Because, well, who's ever making this decided that to say that the Navy didn't follow the Geneva Convention, even though they didn't, how can we word it so it doesn't seem as bad, right? So don't let people off the hook, right? The other thing about passive voice, if you have lots of theirs in, right, there are reasons for, and a lot of there are's, you're going to end up probably having some passive stuff, and it's much stronger to go into just say what the reasons are, not there are. A little bit down the road too, I will have, we'll go over some word searches you can do on your document to help get rid of passive voice, but that will be at a later date. All right, I just paused to make sure I write that down, and that happens. So now let's go over the homework for the upcoming week. Right. 2 more chapters, we're almost done, and some more moving into some research for your new paper. So I want you to read chapter 9, and in your post, I want you to both write about, a main idea that you found interesting, and then thinking of your topic. Chapter 9 is about, in one sense, how people separate into groups, right? So whatever your topic is, I want you to see, does it apply to your topic? Is there a place where certain people, does your topic have different groups? What separates them, right? So that would be thinking about whatever your new topic is, right? That one that you mentioned at the beginning of the semester, right? And say, how does this topic, right? How is it affected by how groups are shaped, or how does it shape groups? For example, if you were doing something on gun control, right, which I don't think anybody posted, but you could see how that can form groups, pro and against, and lots of stuff going on. So how are groups shaped? Now, chapter 10 is about hive mentality, about how we can all work together and do amazing things. So I want you to think about, in your topic, right, is there a place where it brings people together? So another way of saying this, think about how your topic separates people. That's connected to chapter 9. And then think about how your topic, whatever it is, brings people together. Chapter 10. Now, that's huge and broad, but I think that would be a good place to start. And just know, depending on your topic, one of those might be easier to connect from the other. And if for whatever reason you say, I don't see the connection here, Steve, go ahead in your post and say, hey, look, here's my topic. This is why I don't think groups apply. What do you think? And you can get a discussion going there. Today, the perspective lecture that I've been talking about for a while will go up. So, homework this week. Read chapter 9 in post, read chapter 10 in post, and I am going to have a perspectives lecture coming up. It's going to be tied to, right, some research that I want you to do, because I will want you to make sure you're looking at different areas to get a good view of your topic. And I'll be grading your papers this week.